Oh dear, I think our resident tech lead from, of course, Blizzard Europe didn't like that song. What a shame. Unfortunately, it's nothing short of epic. Therefore, it must be played. Fintroll, fantastic band, folk metal from Finland, oddly enough, but they do sing in Swedish. And no, I shall not be attempting to speak Finnish, Swedish, or any other your crazy moon languages at any point in this show. Alright, you are listening to Blue Please here on WoW Radio, the cynical Brit ranting for no apparent reason at all. The theme of this show has been RP, and it will continue in some respects to be so, but it will not be dedicated to role-playing. That's Medros's role. Hey! See what I did there? On Wednesday, that's Know Your Role. Okay. Now, we did get our battle plan. We've seen a battle plan once before, released by Blizzard, and we've had the number 2. It has been released on the forums for those of you who've read it. And it's got some exciting things in it. And the first of those will, of course, be that the first public showing of the expansion for World of Warcraft will be at BlizzCon. Fantastic. I'll be at BlizzCon, and I shall be saying, hoo-hoo, that looks nice. And hopefully it won't be full of complete crap. But I would trust that Blizzard will address the concerns of the community in this expansion. So, what has it got in it? For those that don't know, it's going to be containing a variety of things. Of course, you're going to be getting more content. More quests, more weapons, more dungeons, and all that sort of stuff. And there is, of course, the possibility, or so the BlizzCon website did say, or maybe I was on crack at the time, I can't remember. Let me see, blizzcon.com. Not disorganised or anything here. blizzcon.com, there we go. And there was the possibility that this expansion would contain hero classes. Hero classes have been a very popular article of discussion on this show, and of course on the forums. And the possibility of progressing your character beyond the bounds of level 60 into something wholly different has been a very exciting one for myself and many others, I'm sure. But yes, the battle plan consists of a variety of things, and they are talking about raid content. More dungeons. Now, last week I addressed the concept that maybe they weren't going in the right direction when it came to dungeons. In that perhaps adding simply more and more and more dungeons that work in exactly the same way, that are harder and harder and harder, and all that's going to require is you to find the strategy and execute it to perfection in order to succeed. Is that the way that people want the game to go? I don't know. Personally, while I do like the idea of having more dungeons to shoot for and having more things ahead of me to keep me interested in the game, I don't necessarily think that simply adding more and more and more and more of these high-level 40-man dungeons that are progressively more ridiculous, as we saw in the Nefarian encounter. Yeah, that big dragon up the top of Blackwing Lair. Some guys have attempted it, and the video is ridiculous. Go and try and download it and just see how ridiculous it is. The amount of ads and nasty damage that's being thrown out there. It's crazy, crazy talk. But then again, perhaps that was the way people first thought of Ragnaros. But then again, he did get nerfed. Whether or not that's the way to go is questionable at best, but I certainly would not object to having more content. Whether or not it's the way I want them to go is irrelevant. More content is good, because it gives people more things to do. And that means the community itself will hold itself together, and hopefully not hold itself together through whining and misery, but rather through enthusiasm for new content, and all of this new fat loot and encounters. At the end of the day, this is what MMORPGs have become, and moved away from the whole classic style of role-playing. Whereas the classic style of role-playing did involve taking out, say, a big dragon, getting some nice items, the experience itself was what really drove people to do it, not the fat items. And some people, I would have to say, do have the attitude that the fat items are the be-all and end-all of everything. And that is the reason that they will willingly exploit parts of the game in order to obtain them. It would be naive and, in fact, completely untrue to suggest that people have not been exploiting this game in parts to obtain the items they wish. There have been various bugs with the Blackwing Lair. There have been the issues of instance stealing with Molten Core. And, of course, the first ever kill of Anoxia was exploiting a bug in the way Anoxia worked. And it's unfortunate that people seem to have lost sight of the fact that they're supposed to be playing the game for fun and not for the fat loots. Having the fat loots does not make you a better person, I'm afraid. If you have somehow been fooled into believing this, I don't know, by evil spirits or maybe a giant flying pig in the sky, no, it's not correct, I'm afraid. Well, I'm not going to dictate to you how you play. The original idea of games were for recreational purposes. They were for fun. And if that's not the reason you're playing the game, then really you should probably consider another hobby. Because all you are, in fact, attaining are virtual items, intangible things that don't really exist and that don't belong to you. But anyway, back to the point at hand. The battle plan contains a variety of interesting topics. World events, which we have discussed in this show. That's another one of them. Now, it's good to see that they are wanting to add more dynamic interactions into the game, because right now I think the game is a little bit static, and it's at risk of becoming stagnant. Not good, not what you want to see, and especially in a game you enjoy and have dedicated a lot of your time to. The world itself, it seems that anything you do in the world is ineffectual. Battlegrounds, for instance. We don't even know who is winning these battlegrounds in general. Who has the supremacy in Alterac Valley? There is no system to tell us, and there is no reason, even if there were a system to tell us, to implement such a system without a result. Some kind of effect. And there isn't one. We don't get a citywide buff in Ogrimmar if we win Alterac Valley more than the Alliance do. We don't see changes in territory. No. It's the same every time we go in. And that's fair enough, in respect of what it is. It is a battleground. It is designed for battle rather than designed for progressive content. However, it feeds into this idea that World of Warcraft itself does not progress enough and could do with something to make the world a little more dynamic. Now, I understand the concerns of Blizzard and some people that if you were to make the world dynamic, it is possible that certain players would miss out on changes and content that already exists. Now, I'm not saying make quests that will simply cancel and delete themselves after someone has attained them. That isn't fair on everyone else that wanted to do that quest. Content should be equally available to all. If they're willing, of course, to jump through the required hoops to get it. But just because content has to be available for all doesn't mean that world-changing events can't happen. You cannot make a world-changing event available to everyone. It is a simple proven fact that you will never get all of WoW's community on at the same time, and you will never get them all wanting to participate in events such as this. But that's no excuse not to have them. I take, for example, Matrix Online, which, as many of you know, is a pile of wank. However, it did have a very good idea of integrating the game with the story of the Matrix in the same way that WoW is integrating the Warcraft story into itself. The problem and difference with that is that in the Matrix Online there were world-changing events occurring, and even if people weren't able to attend them, they would still hear a lot about them, and I think that is half the battle. If people hear about them and know of this change, then they will be excited by a dynamic and progressing, ever-changing world, and at the moment we don't have that. I accept that World of Warcraft is in its early days at the moment. Compared to EverQuest, it is a baby. And I don't believe it ever started with the intention of having a dynamic, progressive world. Instead, it started with the intention of being a very good MMORPG in the classic style. The fat loots, the big encounters, and the team play. And in that respect, it succeeded. It did very well. However, maybe it's time to progress it and evolve it into something not simply evolutionary, but revolutionary. A thought, perhaps. Something for you to mull over. Now, speaking of mulling over, what we do every show is we have a working as intended section. And we've got a little sound sample for it. And it goes goes a little bit like this. It's working, yeah, it's working as intended, baby. Yes. Now, a lot of people seem to find that disturbing, and I'm not entirely surprised. It is disturbing. Incredibly disturbing. But, unless someone can do a better sound sample, that's what you're stuck with. Here's the fact of the matter. Working as intended is designed to get the brain power of people flowing, as it were. There are a lot of very intelligent, very creative people that listen to this show and WoW Radio and exist in this community in general, and they drive the community towards greater things. And while we love the game that Blizzard has created, we do not necessarily agree with all their changes, and that's what Working as Intended is all about. We try and think of alternative solutions to things that Blizzard may not necessarily have thought of yet, or may have done in a different way. Now, this week, it's about Alterac Valley. Many people have suggested and put forward the opinion that Alterac Valley is not necessarily as good as it could be. And they make comparisons to the old eternal ping-pong match of doom between South Shore and Tarren Mill, which, of course, as you are well aware, was the hotspot for PvP before the battlegrounds were put into place. And there is indeed some PvP there still. Of course, the unfortunate backlash of that particular PvP battle was that Healsbrad became inaccessible for those who were trying to do quests there, and that was unfortunate because it was quite a nice zone, and the quests there were enjoyable. That changed, and it's now gone into the battlegrounds. The problem with that is that the methods of organisation within World of Warcraft are perhaps not good enough to encourage a more tactical and strategic battle over the concept of a tacticless, quote, Zergfest, unquote. So, I want to hear your ideas. How would you improve the way that Alterac Valley is not only designed, but the grouping and command coordination structures, of which, of course, there are very few, exist within the battleground itself? What would you do? How would you change Alterac Valley to turn it into less of a Zergfest and more of an epic battle? Yes, I did say epic. You know you want to. So, if you have a suggestion of how you would improve Alterac Valley, turn it into an epic battle rather than a tacticless Zergfest, as some people have professed that they believe Alterac Valley is, then email themurloc@gmail.com. That is, themurloc@gmail.com with your suggestions, and they will be read out, so include your names. I'd like to welcome Thundgot, our community manager, who's chosen to grace us with his presence. And yes, the last time a community manager did join our IRC channel, I accidentally banned him. Sorry about that. But yes, welcome to Thundgot. Hope you enjoy the show. Okay, for those who haven't listened to Blue Please before, we do contain and put out these comedy features. Some people find them funny, some people think they're just totally rubbish. And that's fair enough. But some people enjoy them, and that's why they're there. And they exist to break up the show and make the show just a little bit different from a 2-hour rant fest. So, we have a section called Ask the Murloc, and we have a little sound sample for that too. Ask the Murloc. We have our own Murloc in the studio. He is not your ordinary Murloc. He's a high-class Murloc, and he doesn't like you. And he will be answering your questions right now in Ask the Murloc. Enjoy. Ask the Murloc.
Dear Murloc, how do you give gold to your other characters in the game? I didn't think you could. But I read that you could on another forum, but it didn't explain how. Please help.
Prepare for inevitable and painful doom, mortals, for it is I, the Murloc. Ha-ha! My powers include dancing and, hiding things. Yeah. The method of transferring gold from one character to another is immensely complicated and requires powerful sorcery, much beyond your pitiful reach, you snivelling beanpole. However, for the sake of kindness, I will indulge you. Gold can only be transferred using a complex routine. Firstly, you must acquire 80 conjured crystal water. This can be usually obtained by opening a trade window with a 60 mage and saying, "Water, now!" The mage will no doubt acquiesce to your request and give you the water you desire. Then you must sell it on the auction house for an amount of money you wish to obtain. Ignore that drivel about not being able to sell conjured items. It is simply a trick designed to fool you into thinking that you cannot. To bypass this mere smokescreen, simply press Alt plus F4. This will transfer your gold and your soul. Ha ha!
Ask the Murloc.
Dear Murloc, where is the graveyard? I have heard many people talking about it, but can you tell me where it is? And what is the suggested level for it?
Ah, my dear, yes, I can take you to the graveyard, no problem at all. However, it is not somewhere that you can just walk into. No, it is a secret, magical place full of wonderful treasures just waiting for you and only you. First, you must take this sacred artifact. Yes, I know it looks like a brick, but really is a sacred, holy artifact of the mystical pie god. Place it inside the divine sheath. Yes, I know it looks like a sock. It is, in fact, the sacred garment worn by Uther Lightbringer himself. Now go to sleep as normal and leave the artifact next to your bed with your door unlocked. You may feel an unpleasant sensation, much like a severe concussion. This will be a small price to pay for a trip to the mystical graveyard. Ha ha!
Ask the Murloc.
Dear Murloc, what's the fastest way to make money in a short period of time?
Oh, good Lord, how many times have I been asked this pathetically easy question? The answer is simple, my gourd-bellied little codpiece. Sell your brain to science so they can work out why you're so ridiculously inept at everything you do. Yeah, now I must be off. Leave the Murloc in peace, you fools, before I leave you in pieces. Ha ha!
Ask the Murloc.